Hey guys, how's it going? Tua Cruz here and welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about turning your heart rate data into a power meter. So is it possible to use just a heart rate strap and get power meter data which you can use to then ride your bike on ZWIFT? So today I've got my spin bike here and I've made a couple videos on my channel talking about how I use my spin bike to connect this onto ZWIFT. And I've gotten a lot of questions about my setup and mainly, is there a cheaper solution? So up until now, I've used power meter pedals to connect my bike to ZWIFT. There's two ways to connect your bike onto ZWIFT, and the first one is a speed sensor, but this isn't very accurate because sometimes the more resistance you add onto your bike, the slower the speed is going for spinning the wheels. So the speed sensor solution is really not ideal if you want to connect your bike to ZWIFT. And the other and more accurate way to connect your bike onto ZWIFT is with a power meter. And many of you guys know power meters are quite expensive and it's a pretty big investment to just be riding ZWIFT or things like that. But the solution we're going to introduce today is really cheap, really affordable, really accurate, and it's a great way to get onto ZWIFT cheaply. So this is actually done with an app, and I've got it loaded here on my phone. This is the HR2VP application, and this company reached out for me to do this review, and I was really excited to do it because I love showing you guys some alternative cheap solutions so you can get out there, enjoy the bike. I've got a lot of people on this channel asking how they can connect their bike onto ZWIFT, and now we've got a cheap way to do it. So cheap power meters nowadays usually start at about $500, and a regular heart rate strap I think you can get for about 30 or 40 bucks, so there's a huge difference in price right there. But anyway, in today's video, we're going to talk about this application. First, we're going to talk about how to set it up and get everything ready and get on ZWIFT and get Zwifting. And then the second half of the video, I'm going to talk about the other things about the application, so some of the good points, the bad points in my testing with it. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started and get on the bike. And the first thing we got to do, of course, is get this heart rate strap on. So it doesn't matter what kind of heart rate strap you're using. I'm using a chest strap because that's what I've got, but if you have a different kind of strap, that'll work. So let's get this on real quick. The first thing you're going to need to do is search for the HR2V Power application on either the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. And this is a paid application, but you can see it is really cheap. It's only $1.50 per month. And I think once I talk about the benefits of this application today, you're going to see that it's well worth the money. So once you download the application, you can see I have some of my stats here. So I've done about 5 hours of testing with this so far. I've done this both inside on ZWIFT riding, and I've done this also outside for outdoor riding. So anyway, before you start, you want to go through your settings. You want to set everything up. So this company, they've developed their own algorithm to analyze heart rate data and to convert it to power so they can record the change in the heart rate. For example, if your heart rate is 150 at one point, but 150 at another point, it's not just going to be a direct translation from that heart rate to that power. It's going to be the power that was leading up to that. It's going to be the change in your heart rate, the jumps in your heart rate, and everything like that. So they've developed this whole algorithm around this, and it's based around putting these numbers in here. So the more numbers you can put in here more accurately, the more accurate this is going to be for you. So I've got some of my numbers in here right now, and my resting heart rate, this is not your waking heart rate, by the way. This is your normal kind of just sitting around resting heart rate. And I've got a pretty low resting heart rate, I think. I'm at about 50. Let me know what you guys think. Is that low or high? And my FTP, this is your functional threshold power. So ideally, to get this accurately, you'd have ridden a power meter before at some point in your life and you'd be able to know a rough estimate about this. But you can play with these figures and you can adjust it later to calibrate better to your fitness that you think. So anyway, for me right now, my FTP is about 280, so not too high, not too low, but pretty good. They also have a cool tool on their website where you can upload one of your rides with power data if you have it, and it'll automatically give you the numbers you need. Another cool tool they have in here is an estimate. So if you don't know your FTP, for example, we have mine right now, but if I were to click this, it would give me an automatic assumption based on my other numbers that I put in here. So you should be able to know your max heart rate, resting heart rate, and your weight in kilograms. And it'll give you a rough average kind of FTP solution there. So if you're in better fitness, you can up this up a little bit and you can lower it. And the way this application works is it broadcasts its own Bluetooth signal or ANT+ signal. So you can use either ways. You can connect this to your cycle computer. You can connect this directly to your regular computer, which I have over here. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. But if you were riding outside, you could connect this to your cycle computer. Really easy to work with. Put in your settings and then you're ready to go and just start right away. So let's hit start and let's begin. And there we go. So it took a second to activate. It's searching for my heart rate. And you can see this is what the application looks like. This is the amount of time that's elapsed up in the top. And this is my current heart rate, so I'm a little bit above my resting heart rate at the moment because I'm getting all excited talking to you guys. And this color will change based on how hard you're going, so what's a good way for me to get excited? Let me see. I've got some nice iced oolong tea here, so this is a good way to get the heart rate up. Let's drink some of this. Oh yeah, thumbs up for iced oolong tea. Anyway, I don't think it's kicked in yet. So you can see my base wattage here, it's putting me at about 50 watts. So already I'm putting out energy just by standing here, just by breathing. And it's going to give you an estimated distance based on how hard you're exercising. And it also gives an estimated calories burned. So this is some pretty standard stuff. And I'm on Android here, but this will work with iPhone setup as well. And you can see I've got my two signals going right now. This is the Bluetooth signal and this is the Ant Plus signal. So we have our power meter data going. The next step is to connect this to our computer. So let's head on over to the bike. All right, so time to get the shoes on and get on the bike. Let's begin. And the other really cool thing about this solution is this will work with any pedals. So I'm using cycling shoes right now, but you could use this with regular workout shoes, regular tennis shoes on flat pedals, and it'll work just the same. So the next step here is to launch ZWIFT and get our equipment connected onto there. For me, because I'm using this computer, I need to use this Ant Plus receiver. So depending on your computer setup that you're using, you might need this, you may not use it, but for my setup, I need this. So I'm going to plug this into my USB receiver here. And I've pulled up ZWIFT on the screen here, so let's pull that up on the camera. So I've got my signal being broadcasted from here. And you don't need to keep this on the entire time, by the way. You can turn off your screen and it'll still broadcast fine, so you can save some battery life there. So let's unpair these both and let's search for the power source. Let's hit OK. And we're going to search for the heart rate as well. And you'll notice that this is showing two different signals for heart rate. One is coming from the heart rate monitor itself, and the other one is coming from the phone on the application. I don't think it makes a difference which one you choose, so we're just going to choose either one of them. I'll choose the top one. And there we go. We've got our power source. We've got our heart rate. This is all we need to ZWIFT. Actually, you don't even need your heart rate in here, but we have the data. We may as well include it now. Everything else here is optional. If you have a cadence sensor, you can sync it, but if not, you don't need it. So let's go ahead and begin. And for today's test, we're going to head over to Wattopia. So there we go. We're ZWIFTing right now. That's all you need. You need your ZWIFT account. You need this application, a heart rate sensor, and that's pretty much it. And you can be ZWIFTing anywhere. So you'll notice my character is already moving around a little bit, and my watch just jumped up a little bit as my heart rate's getting excited right now. So this application detects changes in your heart rate and adjusts accordingly. It realized that was a fake spike, and my power has dropped back down to 50. So it seems like my minimum speed is going to be pushing this 50 watts. So that depends on the gradient on the course. We're at a 0% gradient right now. So it's going to be moving right now at about 19 kilometers per hour. But anyway, let's get on the bike and let's see how this changes once we start pedaling. All right, there we go. And I'm on a spin bike again today. So for anyone who's never used a spin bike before, it works basically like a flywheel. So the pedals are connected to the flywheel, and when there's no resistance on the flywheel, it's really easy to spin. It takes a little energy to get it moving, but once you get it rotating, it's really easy. I'm not really putting out any effort, and you can see this is expressed in my power reading on the application right now. So it did jump up a little bit as it detected a little change in my heart rate, but it quickly adjusted and went back down. It knows I'm not really putting out any effort right now, so I'm at the minimum of about 50 watts. And with the spin bike, when you add resistance, you add the brake pad, it pushes against the flywheel, so it makes it harder to push. So that's why a speed sensor wouldn't work here, because the more resistance you add, the slower the wheel is going to go, and so the slower your speed would go on a speed sensor. So a speed sensor is not going to be accurate on here. You need a power meter, and that's why this application is really handy. So let's go ahead and start adding some resistance on the wheel. It'll start making some extra noise. You can hear that. That is the brake pad rubbing on the flywheel. It's still really quiet compared to other trainers, and that's one of the reasons I got this spin bike, because I needed a quiet solution for living in a small apartment. So I haven't warmed up or anything right now, and let's see how this changes as I get warmed up here. You'll also notice some data down at the bottom of the screen here on ZWIFT. There's a red line, and that's your heart rate, and then the gray line below that is the power. So the power line will be changing colors too as I get into higher power zones. So in today's test ride, I want to show you guys how this app actually responds when you're riding here on ZWIFT, how it works in different intervals, how it works in different sprints and different settings. So we're going to go through that together. So let's add some more resistance on here again. Let's get warmed up really quickly. Let's see how this adjusts. So we can see as my heart rate is starting to increase, my power is continuing to climb with it together on the graph down in the bottom. And again, this is not a direct correlation from heart rate to power. It's all included in their algorithm on the changes in the heart rate before you get to that point. So right now I'm at 130 beats per minute, putting out about 175 watts, but that'll be completely different based on that heart rate if, for example, I'm cooling down or something like that. So it takes all of that into account and adjusts accordingly. It actually gives a really good, really accurate power reading. And I'm going to show you guys some charts at the end of the video comparing the power data from the heart rate monitor with the application to an actual power meter. It's pretty surprising how close the results are. And let's gradually keep kicking this up. So I'm sure I'm pushing over 200 watts right now, and it takes a couple seconds for it to adjust. I think they said on their website that it usually adjusts within about 10 seconds or so to any big changes in power. So here we go. In the time that I was done talking, it's already adjusted. It's pushed me up to about 250. So for any changes in power, it's not going to be exactly real time at the moment when you change the power. There is going to be a little bit of a delay when you add that power or when you decrease that power, but at the same time, if you were to lower that power again afterwards, there'd be a delay in the drop. So the overall average data is really accurate. So we're pushing upper 280s, close to my FTP, which is definitely what I feel right now. I'm getting a little out of breath. My power grid down in the bottom is starting to get into the colored zones. Heart rate is still steadily rising. So this has been a good little 5-minute warm-up climb. Let's ease off on the pedals really quickly. Let's see how long this takes for it to adjust. Like I mentioned before, there is a couple second delay. So I'm just coasting right now. Obviously not putting out very much power, but I'm still talking, so I'm going to stop talking. Yeah, there we go. So it dropped down really quickly. Another reason my heart rate is still going up a little bit is because I'm doing a lot of talking in this video, so that obscures the results a little bit. But if I weren't talking and I would just relax normally, this would be a lot more accurate. The other interesting thing to look at this point is the drop in both the graph for the heart rate and also the drop in the graph for the power. So the drop for the heart rate is just this steady, slow drop. You can see that on here on the screen. But then the drop for the power is pretty instantaneous. It drops down instantly. So that's a feature of this application and the algorithm, is being able to detect those changes and calculate it accurately in how that would appear in power. And the other big advantage of this program is, of course, you're able to ZWIFT. You're able to get on ZWIFT pretty accurately with a cheap setup. That's, of course, the number one benefit. The other benefit for this is for anyone who's also doing training. So I've done a lot of training in my career. I've done training based on heart rate. I've done training based on power. And training by heart rate can be a really good, efficient way to get some training in. The bad thing about when you train with heart rate is you're really limited on the amount of data that you get. So when you look at your heart rate data at the end of the ride, you see a steady line of how your heart rate changed throughout that ride. And then the other thing is you get a percentage in each zone. So your heart rate was at this zone for this percent of the ride. But you can see heart rate data by itself is not always super accurate. It's really important to calculate what's happening before that heart rate. How is the heart rate changing? How is it accelerating? How is it decreasing? And being able to get this extra power data from this application, this gives you a lot more insight into your ride, into the type of training that you're doing, and the type of workout you're able to do. Also, there are a bunch of workouts built into the ZWIFT application which are really great for training, and they're all based on power. So being able to get power data by using your heart rate, you're also able to participate in those training programs, which can be really good for improving your fitness. So I think I've cooled down enough now. Let's do another effort really quick here. Let's ramp it up and we're going to do another sprint. So I'll show you how that data responds. So the power is starting to catch up. We're over 200 watts now. The difficult thing with spin bikes is if you put too much resistance on, it's basically a brake. You're constantly pushing against the brake, so you got to be careful not to put too much resistance on or else you're just not going to be able to pedal anymore. That's why sprinting on a spin bike is really difficult. But we're going to do a quick sprint here. I'll show you guys how this responds. So in an outdoor sprint, if I'm on a regular road bike, I'm able to get over 1,000 watts consistently. But on a spin bike, I usually max at about 800 watts when I'm using my regular power meter. So let's go ahead and do a quick little warm-up sprint. I'll try and sprint for about 10 seconds. So yeah, when you sprint on a spin bike, you gotta reduce the resistance on the wheel or else you're gonna be stuck not pedaling anymore. So you'll notice that the application only read me is going, I think it maxed out at about 500 watts or so, and I'm positive that sprint I was going at least about 800 watts in the sprint. And that's one of the limitations I found on this application so far, is it's not really great with analyzing short data. Anything I would say that's under about 30 seconds is not going to be as fully accurate as it would be with a normal power meter. And one of the reasons for that is this needs a little bit more data to work with to get a more accurate full picture. So efforts over 30 seconds, it can analyze all the changes in your heart rate. It knows the full picture of what's happening. But short sprint efforts like this one that I just did are, again, really short, really limited. There's not much data, it's not very long, and it's just kind of a jump. Sometimes my heart rate doesn't have enough time to adjust. By the time I finish sprinting, I'm already slowing down, I'm already cooling down. So my heart rate would jump up a little bit to get going, but then the effort's over before it even began. So this is basically the biggest limitation with this program currently, is it's not going to be able to record your max power output during a sprint. But anything, again, longer than 30 seconds is going to be astonishingly accurate. I've also done this and used this on my rides outside as well. And I did the same ride with my regular power meter. I did the same ride with the heart rate application and compared the power data. And here's a graph of how that ride looked. And you can see the overall picture of the whole ride compared to each other is really, really close. So this is really impressive to see. So this brings us into the pros and cons of this application, and let's begin with the cons because we just saw on my sprint there, it didn't show my full wattage. I was expecting to get at least about 800 watts on that sprint. It only showed about 500. The sprint was only about 10 seconds. My heart rate didn't have enough time to adjust to the effort. If this was a more like serious sprint, a real sprint where there's a long warm-up leading into the sprint, a lead out, and my heart rate gets more full picture data for that, it might be a little bit more accurate. But in general, this application is limited on being able to read really high short intensity efforts like that. So again, anything under than 30 seconds is going to be a little bit wishy-washy and maybe a little bit lower than you would get on a normal power meter, which has instantaneous feedback. Really, I would say that's the only con with this application, any big noticeable con anyway. But going on to the benefits of this application is, again, anyone can get out on ZWIFT really easily. You don't need to buy an expensive power meter. It's really affordable for anyone to use, and I love recommending affordable solutions to my audience to get out there and ride their bikes more. The other pro is this is a really accurate solution, especially in the overall entire picture of the ride, and so you're going to have a really accurate solution at a fraction of the price. The other big pro is ease of use. You saw the whole installation process. You just download the app, put in a couple figures, and hit start and you're good to go. So anyone can use this. You don't need to be really tech savvy or anything. Anyone should be able to download this app and use it. So before HR2VP reached out for me to do this review, I was a little bit skeptical about being able to convert heart rate data into power data. But after testing this application for the last few weeks, both indoors and outdoors, with the exception of the really short sprint efforts, I can say that this is a really solid application and the data is, again, surprisingly accurate. You saw some of the graphs and you saw my test ride here. So I definitely recommend this to anyone who's curious to test it out and looking for a nice cheap solution to get on a ZWIFT or a cheaper power meter to use. And yeah, let's go through the last steps here. So let's finish up our ride and I'll show you guys how to close everything down. And you'll notice that even though I did stop pedaling and I got off my bike, my character is still moving and my heart rate is still calming down. I'm still talking to you guys, so that's keeping my heart rate higher up than it normally would be. And actually, before we end our ride here, I'm going to turn off the application here on my phone so you guys can see how this will respond in the application. So I'm connecting with Ant Plus. Let's click this and turn off the Ant Plus. And now the signal is stopped. So my power meter should also stop giving out signal. So my power meter should stop giving out signal, and you can see my character is now stopping. So you can stop your character that way by stopping it in the application. Also, we want to finish up and close this application, so you can see on today's test ride I rode about 30 minutes, and it also shows a couple different fruits and different foods down here in the bottom, basically how many calories you ate. So we just hit stop. So anyway, it shuts down the application, but if we wanted to start it again, I can hit start. And it'll take a few seconds to get going again, but you can see the power meter is detected again on Zwift and my character started moving again. So if you needed to take a break for any reason, you can just stop the power application in here, hit exit, and it'll stop your character for a little bit, and then you can go whatever you need to do, go to the bathroom break or something, and you can come back. But I don't think it's too big of a deal. Usually when I'm riding on here, I don't take breaks or anything. So thanks again to HR2VP for sponsoring today's video. I was really excited to test out this application and it exceeded all my expectations, so I'm really excited to recommend it to all of you guys. I'll leave some links down below so you can check out the application on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store as well. Thanks again for watching today, guys, and we'll see you next time here on Two Wheel Cruise.